All right, today we're going to be talking about Blizzard's latest news, Dinar vendor adding mythic dungeon trinkets to it. This is coming with the Turbo Boost event. This has caused a lot of controversy. The previous iteration has caused a lot of controversy, I should say, about basically mythic gear only being available to like mythic raiders, having to kill the boss. Basically, outcry has been crazy, and Blizzard has just posted a blue post a couple hours ago now at this point, that the weekly quest that provides the puzzle and cartel chips will now offer players a choice between killing 4 raid bosses or completing 4 mythic dungeons. Upon doing so, you're going to get awarded that Dinar or puzzle and cartel chip, and players will now be able to purchase mythic plus loot from them, specifically trinkets. The Mythic Track dungeon trinkets will require both the currency and having beaten the timer in all Season 2 Mythic Plus dungeons at a 12 or higher. I believe this is around the 2850 mark if you're doing all 12s. Maybe it's a little higher. Maybe it is the 3K mark. I don't remember, if I'm being honest. I think this is good. This is a fine middle ground, I believe. I'm actually kind of surprised. I thought Blizzard was really going to stand their ground on this, and it was just going to be a terrible system. I'm glad that they're adding the dungeon trinkets. And so in this video, I want to specifically talk about what Brewmaster specifically who do Mythic Plus may want to buy. So fairly specific, but here's kind of my thought process. So if you're someone who only does Mythic Plus, you do not raid at all one single bit, you can benefit from the system as long as you're doing 12s, of course. Let's talk about some of the trinkets you're going to want to buy. Now, keep in mind, you're going to have access to 3 total dinars, or puzzle and cartel chips in this case. Technically 9 puzzle and cartel chips, but it costs 3 to buy. Anyways, if we look at the dungeon pool, there aren't really all that many great trinkets. Now, for Brewmaster specifically, I would say there's actually 4 though, which is going to make the decision a little difficult, and it depends on what you end up playing. So what we are seeing from a lot of Master of Harmony enjoyers is that they are actually playing Signet of the Priory. Now, this is to sync up with your Weapons of Order, making that Weapons of Order window extremely versatile, extremely durable. It's giving you anywhere between 7,000 crit or verse, depending on your highest stat. If you have a third stat that's higher than the other 2, you're clearly not stated well. But basically having insane crit or insane versatility during that window, it's a 30-second window, but for 20 seconds is really powerful. Plus, you might be running with classes that also are playing Signet, which means that you're benefiting even more from that. So this is a solid trinket. Now, Tome of Light's Devotion is also a really good trinket to pick up, but the caveat is that it's good for lower content, homework keys, maybe if you're trying to push up or to chest a lower key that you're maybe trying to like get to an IO level key, or it's good if you do raid. So this is more of a caveat trinket. If you're someone who just does 12s and does low content and you feel confident in your ability to play the class defensively well, this is actually going to be a really strong trinket for you because it just does a lot of damage. And it's probably the highest damage dealing trinket out of this pool. So if you have 2 dinars and you're looking for 2 good trinkets, the Prior to the Sacred Flame trinkets are very, very good for that. Now we're going to take a step over to Operation Floodgate. The Improvised Sephorium Pacemaker is one of our best in slot trinkets across the board. It provides good damage, good healing. It provides a good stat stick of main stat, which means that you're going to have higher effectiveness of stagger. And overall, it's just a really good, well-rounded trinket. You can play it both for having additional defensive value or offensive value. I like this trinket a lot. It's a good passive stat stick. You don't have to think about it. It's not on use. You don't have to try to sync up cooldowns. You just have it, and for 50% of the time, you're gaining a massive amount of critical strike. And last but not least, we have the Ringing Ritual Mud. This is by far the best defensive trinket you can get from the pool. While it doesn't work with stagger, it does provide a nasty absorb. And it can crit too. So it can absorb upwards of like 14 mil. It also gets cooldown reduction based on dots. Notably, there are a couple of instances this season where dots are pretty relevant. Cinderbrew Meadery is a big one. When you're clearing the first room, you have the Mean Mug. During like Mechagon, for example, you have the Puncture casts that come out, which is just, again, really good. During the final boss, you have the kind of Giga Zap or the Mega Zap that goes on players. If it happens to go on the tank, that dot will reduce the cooldown of the trinkets. Swamp Face, for example, and Giesel Giga Zap. These bosses apply a dot, which reduce the cooldown of this trinket, making it very, very strong and potent for a Brewmaster who's looking for a little extra defensive gain for the highest level of keys. I would recommend this to anyone who plans on or is expecting to push the highest level of content. If you're trying to go for 15, 16, 17, Ringing Ritual Mud is a very good option to have in your arsenal to use. Now, I will say this though. The caveat is that you're going to get a lot more value out of trinkets like Improvised C40 and Pacemaker that apply main stat than you are out of a Ringing Ritual Mud that doesn't apply main stat, because the secondary stats plus the absorb just overall yield less value per item level. So you're better off having this on the hero track just the rest of the time than sacrificing a Dinar if you're planning on spending that Dinar on something else. Now, let's say you only need 2 Dinar, let's say, or Puzzle and Cartel chips. Let's say you only want to buy 2 trinkets and that's it, and you're happy, you're good, then just, you can get this on Mythic. But consider what else you might buy. So let's talk about raiding. Of course, the caveat with this is that you're a Mythic raider and you're probably going to clear the Mythic raid. Now you can, I guess I'll talk about, I guess if you do happen to raid in Heroic, which is fine, but you're putting yourself at a pretty big disadvantage, because buying the hero track version compared to any Mythic track gear you're going to have, especially in the upcoming weeks of the Turbo Boost event, means that you're just going to be at a massive item level disadvantage. And so the trinket or item you're going to buy has to outweigh a maxed out craft or Mythic Track item. So there's not really a lot going on. Now, we're going to obviously scroll all the way to the end because this is the loot that you're really going to want to see. So first things first, Chromebustible Bomb Suit, similarly, but I don't think as powerful as Ring Ritual Mud, is very, very good. You're seeing some of the top cutting edge kind of Brewmaster monks in Mythic Plus are running double defensive trinket. Some of them are running, some that are running Master of Harmony are playing the more Signet Sephorium play style, but the Chromebustible Bomb Suit paired with the Ring and Ritual Mud in certain instances is very, very strong. I would say like things like high floodgates, like your 17s and your 18 floodgates, your opening pulls in Cinderbrew meter, even like later in the B-Wing. There are just some instances where there's a lot of tank busters, a lot of damage going on the tank, and as a Brewmaster who doesn't parry or block attacks, and who doesn't have strong defensives in the first place, these extra defensive options are very good for us. Now, similar to the Ringing Ritual Mud, this trinket still holds a lot of value even on the hero track versus the Mythic track. So if you're a heroic raider and you have AOTC, this is not a bad buy, but I only recommend it if you are doing the or planning to do the highest level of keys. Like this is like title pushing. I don't think you need a Chromebustible Bomb Suit if you're not pushing title, but it is a good defensive option if you'd like it. The small bonus to having this trinket is the fact that when you use it, you turn into a bomb suit, which is very funny. Yeah, that's kind of the added little bonus there. So what else from the raid can we buy? Now, I would say that a lot of the stuff is really going to come down to just being the Mythic track. So another really good option is Capo's Molten Knuckles. At a Mythic item level in Mythic Plus, this is generally, at least in my opinion and from my experience, it's going to hold more value than basically using just a polearm or using 2 regular weapons. I do plan on buying Capo's Molten Knuckles personally for damage. Now, I don't necessarily recommend this. This is a more I don't want to say costly choice, but a specific choice that I make as a personal preference in terms of playstyle, because I like having the double enchant. I just like dual wielding over single like polearm wielding. And if you want information on why I do, I will try to remember to link a video where I talk about the difference between the 2 weapons, because there's actually a lot that goes involved there, or a lot that's involved there. So Capo's and Molten Knuckles is pretty good if you are someone who is dual wielding. And of course, that's it. There isn't really anything else that's worth buying in my opinion. Now I will say this. You are going to be able to buy weapons and some specific like trinkets and items from earlier bosses. So if you're someone who is in an early Mythic guild, or you happen to maybe pug the first 2 bosses, something like crowd favorite, something like the Grease Monkey stick, shift stick, while not quote unquote best in slot, if you've been unlucky from your vault or from the times you've pugged, or it just isn't dropping in your raid team, you can opt to buy a Mythic weapon, which could potentially be better than a crafted weapon. But again, that is also up in the air because of embellishments, so you kind of have to keep that in mind. But basically, there isn't really anything from the raid that I recommend getting. Now, there are some interesting things like a miniature roulette wheel. We haven't been able to see the vendor yet, but I'm assuming, at least I'd like to hope, that you're going to be able to buy any version of this ring since the stats are random. Depending on how you're built out, depending on your character's like current stat weights, you may want to pick up a verse crit or a crit verse version of this ring. You might want to go crit mastery, verse mastery, depending on what stats you currently have. If you're curious on what stats you need, 30% crit or plus 30% crit is where it DRs. So basically up to 40% critical strike, you're going to be safe. Versatility, you want to push up to around the 30% mark. If you can, that's when it also starts to hit diminishing returns. And of course, mastery isn't too bad. I don't have a lot of it personally, but mastery is not a terrible stat. So crit up to 40, verse up to 30, mastery is fine, but it's not as strong as crit, at least until you start hitting those benchmarks. Now, with an increase of item level over the next upcoming weeks, chances are you're going to start hitting both of these diminishing returns, where then mastery is going to be actually one of your most valuable stats beyond that point. If you're able to kill bosses like One Arm Bandit, the Giga Bank Breaker isn't a terrible option either. And if you're someone who plays Windwalker, you know, you can always pick up something like House of Cards. But if you're specifically a Brewmaster like me, these are probably your strongest choices. There's been some theory crafting about Eye of Kazan. This is very, very specific to how you pull a dungeon. There are ways you can pull most instances where you can keep uptime on this trinket. Even in dungeons where we never thought we could, like Mechagon or Dark Flame Cleft, where there's these seemingly moments of long time between bosses, but you're able, the way you can actually play the dungeon and work around some of the nuance of staying in combat, if you can maintain Eye of Kazan stacks throughout the entire instance, it's actually really, really good. And lastly, I do get this question a fair bit about Jaster-Diamond. Is it worth taking? I don't think so. The haste and high mastery, the problem with jewelry right now, and this is fine, like I think it's fine. I think when the way that jewelry is designed is really good, it's generally the majority of your secondary stats. So when you're trading out one of those slots for a very non-ideal stat-weighted item, it's not great. So personally, I don't recommend buying the Jaster-Diamond unless you are like a Windwalker main who might play Brew. But even if you play Brew, I don't know if you necessarily even want to wear it. I don't think Jaster-Diamond's all that great in my opinion. But outside of that, those are the options and what I would suggest getting with Dinar. Now this comes out on May 13th, so in give or take 2 weeks from today. So start kind of planning. You can kind of, in the back of your mind, think about these types of things. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. I hope this video was helpful, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.